Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel tonight. We are stepping into a world that defies logic, nature, and even the limits of human imagination. A world where an entire city rises from the sea like a dream. A city that shouldn't exist, yet somehow stands tall more than 1,000 years after it was first built. This is Venice, and the truth of how Venice was built is far more incredible, dangerous, and unbelievable than anything you've ever heard in school or read in any book. This is the full story, told the way it truly deserves to be told. Imagine northern Italy around the year 400 AD, chaos everywhere, empires collapsing, armies invading, entire cities burning, ordinary people running for their lives. And in the middle of all that fear, some people looked toward the sea not to escape by boat, but to hide inside the water itself. They fled to a strange and dangerous place, a marshy lagoon filled with shifting mud, sharp reeds, unpredictable tides, and dozens of tiny islands barely big enough to stand on. This place was never meant to be a home. But to those desperate people, it was the only place the enemy wouldn't dare follow. The islands were tiny, unstable, and constantly flooded. But danger had pushed these refugees so far that they were willing to try anything. So they did the impossible. They decided to build a city, not a village, not a temporary camp, but a real city, one that could last forever. But there was one small problem. The islands were basically mud. Soft, slippery, unstable mud. You couldn't build a house on it, let alone a palace or a church. Every step you took sank deeper into the ground. But the early Venetians didn't give up. They looked at the mud, looked at the rising tide, and said something that would define their future. If nature will not give us solid ground, we will make our own, and that is where the madness begins. The Venetians traveled far into the mountains, places where forests grew thick and ancient, and cut down massive trees, oak, larch, pine, and alder. They chopped them into long, thick logs. Then they transported these logs across rivers and roads all the way to the edge of the sea. From there, the logs were loaded onto boats and carried into the lagoon. One by one, the logs were hammered deep into the muddy ground, not just a few logs, not a few hundred, not even a few thousand. Venice was built on top of millions of wooden pillars. Each pillar was driven deep into the earth until it hit a layer of hard clay beneath the mud. This clay layer gave support. Over those wooden poles, workers placed thick wooden platforms. And on top of those platforms, they began to build stone buildings. Think about that for a moment. They built a city of stone on top of wooden logs underwater. It sounds impossible, but that's Venice. And here's a secret most people don't know. Those wooden logs should have rotted away long ago, but they didn't. Why? Because in oxygen, poor waterlogged environments, wood does not decay. The lagoon water preserved it. Over centuries, minerals from the salty water seeped into the wood, turning it harder and harder, almost like stone. The foundations of Venice today are not normal wood. They are mineralized pillars, underwater for more than 1,000 years, supporting the city like silent guardians. But building houses was only the beginning. Venice faced a bigger enemy, the lagoon itself. The water was unpredictable, rising and falling with tides, storms, and seasons. Floods could swallow entire houses in minutes. And if they left the lagoon alone, it would either fill with mud and destroy the canals, or erode the islands until nothing was left. So the Venetians did something extraordinary. They redesigned nature. They built long stone walls, called murazzi, along the edges of the lagoon to protect the islands from waves. They dug channels deeper so boats could pass through. They blocked other channels so invaders couldn't sneak in. They redirected rivers flowing into the lagoon so they would not bring in too much silt. Every decision had to be perfect. One mistake could have destroyed the entire ecosystem and sunk the city. Then came the canals. Most cities build streets first and waterways later. Venice did the opposite. The canals became their streets. Boats became their cars, and on these canals, every stone, every brick, every piece of wood, every bag of food. Everything entered the city by boat. There was no other way. Imagine building a giant cathedral without trucks, without horses, without land beneath your feet. Only water. That was daily life in Venice for centuries. One of the biggest challenges was building bridges. The most famous one, the Rialto Bridge, was once considered impossible. It was huge, heavy, and made of stone. Many engineers warned that the foundations would collapse. But the Venetians ignored the doubts and built it anyway, and today, hundreds of years later, the Rialto Bridge still stands, defying everyone who said it couldn't be done. As centuries passed, Venice grew into a powerful empire. Its people became expert sailors, traders, and diplomats. They controlled trade routes across the Mediterranean. Their ships brought silk from China, spices from India, gold from Africa. Venice became rich, so rich that even its smallest palaces were covered in marble. But remember, all those palaces stood on wooden logs underwater, and Venice had another secret. As the water rose over time, the people built upward. When the ground floor flooded too often, they simply built a new floor on top. In some buildings today, entire ancient rooms, old kitchens, old shops, old living spaces are sealed beneath the lower floors, buried like time capsules. Venice is literally built on top of older versions of itself. But the city's greatest threat never went away. Even now, Venice is sinking. The ground beneath the lagoon naturally compresses. Sea levels are rising around the world, and the city continues its eternal battle with water. Modern engineers have created huge barriers, known as moats, designed to block the highest tides, but the sea is unpredictable and Venice's future is never guaranteed. Yet despite everything, Venice stands. It survives because it was built with intelligence, courage, and a spirit of defiance. The people who built Venice were not ordinary builders. They were dreamers, they were rebels, they were survivors. They created something the world had never seen before, a city that floats, a city built not on solid earth but on trust. Trust in their own ingenuity, and that is what makes Venice so mysterious and magical. Every time you see its palaces, its bridges, its shimmering canals, remember that beneath it all lies a forest. A dark, silent forest of ancient wooden pillars, hidden underwater, holding up a civilization. Venice is not just a city, it is a miracle, a dream, a living reminder that humans can reshape nature, rewrite reality, and build beauty in the most impossible places. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep mysteries and incredible tales from around the world. And as always, stay curious, stay brave, and I'll see you in the next one.